want to sing a little song for you, and I was wrestling in my mind. I usually sing one of two songs, so if you ever watch me some other church, you're going to say, he already sang that song. But these are two songs that speak to me, and I usually listen in the service for somebody to say a key word. And so, Pastor, you said new, and so I'm going to sing the song that has the word new in it. So here are these words as sort of an invitation to a little conversation we might have today. I will do a new thing in you. I will do a new thing in you. Whatever you ask for, whatever you pray for, nothing shall be denied, saith our God. Listen to these words one more time. I will do a new thing in you. I will do a new thing in you. Whatever you ask for, whatever you pray for, nothing shall be denied, saith our God. Imagine a pronouncement of God to you, that each and every one of us might matter so much that God wants to do a new thing in you, and you, and you. Don't hide behind the, and you, and you, and you, and you. Often, friends, we are wanting the new thing to be in the institution. We're wanting the new thing to be what council is going to do, or the trustees are going to do, or the new thing is going to be what our musicians are going to be doing on Sunday, or the new thing is what is pastor going to preach, because the new thing is about somebody else. But in this invitational song, God is declaring that the new thing is actually in you. That when the manifestation of God's new thing is happening in each and every one of us, then the thing, the institution that we are a part of, has no other choice but to be transformed. Because we've all brought the newness that is within us into the space, and as a result, we are setting one another aflame. And it's in the setting of the flame, of our gathering together, that literally whatever we ask for, whatever we pray for, cannot be denied. There's something about the collective will of a group of people who sees a Jesus that could also not have white skin, that might be the flame that causes somebody to walk into this place who has never felt welcomed in a church before, but they're going to see an image that might look like them. And then somehow they'll become aware that a group of folks who wanted to get in some good trouble had a conversation, and they were willing to come to the congregation and say, God is doing a new thing. And happy are we that the people of the place decided, well, we're willing to let God do a new thing in us. And so then the layers of the things that block us, the layers of things that become a hindrance to us, the layers of things that can often be a barrier in the, quote, church, melt. The sermon today is a peace that unlocks doors. Now you might be thinking, how is he going to preach about doubting Thomas with that title? I'll get there, I promise. And I'm going to time myself, because as my husband knows, once I start talking, Pastor already let me know that we do want to get you out of here on time. So let me share a couple of thoughts.
No, we're good.
The doors are locked where the disciples are because they're afraid. I want you to think about physical doors in terms of the fact that some of our institutional doors of the church are locked. Locked because we're afraid of trans people. Locked because we're afraid that if people start talking to each other, they might realize that God is not a white supremacist. Some of our doors are locked because how dare you imagine that a woman might preach? Our doors are locked because a same-sex couple wants to get married in the hallowed four walls of some particular churches. The doors are locked because of a theology that's meant to be exclusionary and not welcoming. Now, the disciples were afraid because they felt that their belief system was somehow going to get them to be harmed. They saw what just happened to Jesus, and so they had a safety measure and they locked the door. The first thing Jesus says is, peace be unto you. There is this invitation that when we look towards peace, there is no reason to lock your door. Peace is another way of saying invitation, extravagant welcome. There are no boundaries, no limits, no barriers. Our God is too big to even imagine that someone would be left out. Peace. Peace calms minds. Peace calms hearts. Peace calms the thing in you that wants to have bias and discrimination and resistance because it's just different. You say peace. And you realize that whatever is to come after that might be filled with a little four-letter word, hope. Now, I want to be transparent in the story in the gospel. Jesus had to say peace a couple of times. It wasn't as if Jesus said it once and they were like, yes, we receive it. It just kept going. Like, hey, peace again, peace I'm saying to you again. So it doesn't mean that the work just ends because you realize, wow, we have to unlock the doors and we have to expand our consciousness. And like maybe God actually does want to do a new thing in us, that a new thing might happen in this community and that the world might also be changed. You have to hear it a couple of times. Peace to all the bias that I was raised with. Peace for all the ways I think you're supposed to do church, because if you didn't know, you're supposed to do it in a specific way. Peace to that. Peace about how a church should be organized. I mean, I don't know what you all are doing in this circular business. But you're saying peace to all of the things that we can become so fixated on that we can forget that the whole purpose of a gathering of people who say Jesus is a friend is that they want to continue to make sure there are no barriers, no locks on the doors, and that anyone who finds their way by Woodmont might come in and be welcomed. Yeah. So that peace that we start to stir up in our individuated lives become the peace that's stirred up as a community. And I'm just persuaded that in a world of so much distress and worry and darkness, that peace is light. And when we declare that light, I don't know about you, but I've never been in a dark space that when light entered, that the darkness did not get scattered. I've never been in a place where hate seemed to be the loudest voice and someone started to articulate love, that love didn't begin to drown out that other symbol. But it begins with peace. How do we name it? How do we proclaim it? How do we hear Jesus speaking to our troubled hearts and minds? Peace. Peace I say unto you, peace I give you, peace you should give to one another. Now let's get to Thomas. Thomas wasn't there. So somebody is not here when you all decided to become open and affirming. They were not here. Somebody's not here when you decided that we can put different images of Jesus. Somebody was not here when your church declared that God isn't concerned with a gender binary about who preaches the gospel to you, or the racial embodiment of who the conference minister will be. They aren't here. And so when you start to say, I'm a member of, and they hear everything, they lose all of those thoughts until you say church. You have to have the peace in you to know, be not afraid to share about the joy that's happening here because they weren't there. When you had your anti-racist conversation, they weren't there. When you wrestled about how to be more alive and present in the community, they weren't here. And so similar to Thomas, they are going to need some, as the young people say, receipts. Proof. Embodiment. And we struggle with that a little bit in the congregational church. You know, maybe it's that history, the legacy of sometimes being the church in the center of every town in Connecticut, or, you know, the foundational reality that you couldn't charter a place to live here unless there was a congregational church. So I think we get we might be suffering through, forgive the word, delusion, that somehow people will just know. They'll just get it. Somehow through osmosis, they will realize all of the great work we have done. Thomas was like, let me see Jesus. Like, I don't care what you're saying. I want to see him. And Jesus even knew, even when Thomas sees me, he's still going to have to put his hands in my wounds. What does that mean for all of you? It means that your conference minister is saying to you, part of the peace you speak to the world is becoming more bold in the world about articulating who you are. In a world where they may have only seen one image of church. Part of your journey with Thomas in the world is to say, put your hands in who we are. Find out if we're really going to love you like we say we're going to love you. Find out if we're really going to serve the community like we say we're serving the community. Find out if we really are welcoming. Find out if we really are willing to allow God to do a new thing. That's our work. Many of us get concerned that these sort of invitations sound like, I want you to proselytize. No, I am not saying go stand in the center of Milford with a sign, confess Jesus. No. Because the people who are standing with those signs, if I can just be bold, I don't know if they know Jesus. Or at least the Jesus they're trying to get me to know, I don't want to know him. I don't want to put my finger in his hands or his side or whatever. Because that Jesus doesn't have anything to do with me. That Jesus does not love me. That Jesus does not welcome me. That Jesus doesn't accept my family. That Jesus doesn't accept my call. And there's no counter. Because we are waiting for Thomas to just show up. And then when Thomas gets here, we'll tell you then that we're so great. No. The disciples went and got Thomas. And they were gracious to Thomas even when he didn't believe them. Based on word only. They waited with Thomas until he saw for himself that they meant what they're saying. The people outside of these four walls have seen so many people lying about Jesus that just because you say we have a welcoming one, I'm sorry, they may not believe you. Don't take that personally to you. Speak peace to your ego so you could go, okay, you may not believe me, but I'm going to try anyway. That is how we change the very world around us. It's literally simply telling the truth. When my husband and I arrived to Connecticut, the first thing I saw when we were house hunting was a gentleman standing in the center of West Hartford telling me all of the reasons and all of the ways I could go straight to hell. And you know what? He wasn't shy about it. The sign was bigger than probably his body, and he was wielding it because it was so important to him to tell his truth. Now, I'm going to tell the full story because sometimes preachers don't tell you the whole story. Yes, indeed, my husband did have to grab me because I pulled my car over to the side of the road and rolled down the window and screamed, Jesus is love! He was like, oh my God, can you relax? And I was like, we have to move here as soon as possible because I need to be standing on this corner. there has to be a counter of peace. That sign wasn't about peace. That sign was a manifestation that there was so much unrest in him. The only way he could choose to be in communion with other people was to tell them how less than they were. And I wondered, what would it have been like in that moment if there were a group of open and affirming congregational UCC people who were standing on the other side of him, not with a sign, but saying, can we hug you? Yes. Yes. Can we love you? Yes. Can we tell you about a Jesus that accepts everybody irrespective? And guess what? Even the Jesus who you believe is rejecting you, sibling, also loves you. Different circumstance, different invitation. Thought about, I was pastoring in Seattle, and there were a group of 3 protesters in the middle of a pride event, and our churches were there, and we were the UCC churches, and we had our flags, and we were like, oh, we're great, and come be with us, and everything. And most people were walking past our tables too, because they felt church, 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 and these 3 people were representing church. And a person came by the table and said, so you all are churches, and some of your friends, this was the term they used, are down there hatefully hurting us. While you're sitting here in this park, your friends are hurting us. Ooh, that was marching orders for me. So I was like, oh, I'll be right back. And my church was like, where are you going? And I'm like, come with me. So we left our table. We left all the chocolates and the bracelets and all the, look at us, we're welcoming. And we all marched to where those 3 guys were. And then the young people who were screaming and swearing at them and hurting at them have a deep enough voice that I said, shh. And everybody got it quiet. And I said, I want you to chant something with me. God is love. The crowd grew. Traffic was blocked. There was no movement. But on that corner, in downtown Seattle, in the middle of Pride, what you heard was, God is love. God is love. So much so that the group of 3 folded up their signs because hate could not withstand the true love of God. What I offer you, friends, as I close is this. There's somebody across the street, down the street, in your grocery store, in your library, in your job, in your family, on your Facebook page, that has no idea that a church like this even exists. I know that may seem fantastical, but I do interviews and connections in all 3 states with reporters and other folks, and every single time we end the interview, when the interview stops and the writing stops and the recording, and they go, I didn't even know a church like this existed. And I don't celebrate that. It's an invitation for us to speak some more peace into the world that needs it. So I'm gonna give you 2 freebies for free, right? Just because we're all connected to each other. You know what you can do? Something as simple as when you walk into this space, check in on your phone, on social media. Other things, as churches on social media, you can leave a review. Post one, I feel loved here. I support my community here. We believe in justice here. Put the tagline we say every Sunday, no matter who you are or where you are welcome here. Put it in the reviews, because you don't know who's looking at that, who's watching it, who's aware. And no, guess what? It may be a year before somebody says, why do you keep checking into that church on Sundays? But then in that year moment, say, because it's a place where we'll love you. We'll accept you. We'll befriend you. We even have a good trouble committee. You know, whatever it is. It is those small acts that means that God will not only do a new thing in each one of you, but God will do a new thing in this community and transform it even beyond the great work you're already doing. So I'm not saying add 1,000 more programs and services onto your plate. I'm saying just do better about telling people who you already are. The level of love and welcome that Kenny and I felt from the moment we walked into this place, forgive me if it seems like self-interest, that I want everyone who wants to find a church to feel that. So you can do it. Thomas is waiting on you. Let's find him, her, and them and say, put your hands in our peace, because our doors are always unlocked. Amen.